We want to welcome each of you to our meeting this evening. Thank each of you who are attending in our audience. And we also want to thank each of those who are watching us by way of television. We appreciate your interest in county government. I now call our meeting to order, and we will have our roll call. We will now have our invocation and pledge. Commissioner Webb is going to do our invocation. Commissioner Owens is going to do our pledge. But before we do that, let's all stand. And what I would like to do before we have our invocation is to have a moment of silence out of respect and compassion for those family members and victims who were so indescribably slaughtered up in Newtown, Connecticut. We grieve with those families, and we just want to express our grieving process by having a moment of silence.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you in prayer tonight, Father, and ask for wisdom and guidance as we make decisions on behalf of the people of this county. Father, we come to you in mourning, confusion, hurt at the events in Newtown. We ask your peace upon those people. We ask your peace upon the parents of Pitt County, North Carolina, and the rest of our nation, Father, as we attempt to make any understanding of the events and to move forward together. Father, we just ask these blessings. We ask your continued blessings and safety upon us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's turn and face the flag, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We've had a request to move item number 3 under presentation, the recognition of Eagle Scouts, up to the first thing on our agenda. So I would like to ask for a motion to approve our agenda with that exception. Okay, let's vote. Can I also have a motion to issue that recognition?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, let's vote on that. Okay, we will now have our recognition of Eagle Scouts.
Nelson.
Once again, the Pitt County Board of Commissioners has the privilege to recognize 3 local Boy Scouts who earned the rank of Eagle Scout. And we normally mention that there's only a small percentage of Boy Scouts that actually go on to earn this rank. And in Pitt County, that rank is, or that percentage is much higher than what it is statewide or nationally. Another fact that needs to be mentioned is the projects that are mentioned in these recognitions take literally 50, 100, 150 hours, maybe 200 hours, depending upon what the project is, because it's not just the individual Eagle Scout or Boy Scout that's doing the project. It's normally a team of Boy Scouts that is helping each Scout do the project. So I wanted to mention that. And the first 2 is unique because we have 2 brothers, as I understand it, that have earned the rank at the same time. So if Austin Bryan and his brother Alec will come forward with your family. And any other guests you may have brought. Just stand here for a moment and we'll read through these and see. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to read these? Or?
Yes, please.
Okay. Each is a gold certificate around it, and I'll read each one retrospectively. Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Austin Bryan for achieving the Eagle Scout Award. For his project, he created an archive at the ECU Joiner Library of historical Scout data for the Pitt District and the East Carolina Council. Very unique project that I'm sure will be very valuable to the district. This is presented by the Pitt County Board of Commissioners the 17th day of December 2012. And signed by the chairman, Mr. Garris.
Very good. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
And Alec's project, he painted murals inside the Humane Society building here in Greenville, North Carolina.
Very good. And congratulations. And congratulations to Mom and Daddy, too, because I know it was a family affair. We're proud of your boys.
Congratulations. And our third recognition, Stephen Holloman, if he'll come forward. Welcome. Again, we have a like recognition. I'll read the certificate. Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Stephen Holloman for achieving the Eagle Scout Award. For his project, he built a community garden at the St. Elizabeth Catholic Church in Farmville, North Carolina. Again, signed by our chairman, Mr. Jimmy Garris.
Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're proud of you. And congratulations to both of you. Let me just say that we are very proud of our young men, the young men in our community who are willing to take their time and commit to such an extensive project. Accomplishing becoming an Eagle Scout is not something that occurs overnight. And it is also something that doesn't occur without the support of families. So we congratulate the individual scouts, but we also congratulate the families and say thank you very much. We're proud of you. The next thing on our agenda is two public hearings. The first one is going to be Charles B. Moore rezoning request, and Mr. Rhodes will present that to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we have one rezoning request, and it is for Charles B. Moore. This is a conventional rezoning request, not like one of the conditional zonings that we have used to specifically deal with a particular use. So this is for the entire laundry list of items that come under a general commercial category. So with that preface, more information on this particular case. This is to rezone approximately 2.5 acres of land that's located on U.S. Highway 13, also 264 alternate, and it's to rezone from rural agricultural RA to general commercial GC. On the screen you'll see a map of the site as well as the vicinity around it. This is the intersection of US 13 and Spate Seed Farm Road, also known as Hines Cross Road. This is a map showing the existing land uses. You can see some scattered residential in the tan color here. Couple of red dots indicating commercial type activities, and in particular the one on the opposite side of the road is one that was subject to a rezoning a few years back. The reason there's a red dot here on this corner, there has been some commercial activity on that site for some while, and it's not necessarily something that we zoned for back in 2003, but has been in place there for some while. It's basically some storage buildings along with some other activity on that lot. And again, as far as the county zoning, you can see the one area that is shown as general commercial is the site across the road from this one. And just up the road, you can see another red area that is actually a used car site. Again, the comprehensive land use plan designates the area as rural residential / agricultural, and this area, of course, is indicated to be used for a number of different uses, provided certain locational criteria are found. And in this case, this would be along a major thoroughfare such as US 13, and also in this case at a major intersection as well. And also looking for spatial separation from non-compatible uses, and that's why we have recommended when we first dealt with the applicant to at least scale back and only ask for rezoning for about half the property to keep separation between that and the residential use. The general commercial district, again, this is the one the rezoning is requested for, is to accommodate a range of retail and service. So again, with this particular rezoning, we're looking for the whole laundry list of items, everything from warehouses to a barber shop and all those things that are allowed in the zoning ordinance for general commercial. As far as our recommendation, given the commercial use on the subject property, its location at the intersection along a major thoroughfare, we feel like it is appropriate for this area. And the planning board reviewed it last month and also has recommended approval. So with that, as part of your recommendation tonight too, we wanted to make you aware there is some new language that's included, and this is per state statute. Not only do we have to show that it is consistent with the land use plan, that also the request is reasonable and in the public interest. So with that, we are in agreement with these statements and are recommending that you hold the public hearing at this point.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. I now declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this rezoning request?
Mr. Chairman, there's nobody signed up on the sign-up sheet.
Okay, is there anyone here who would like to speak against it? If not, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the recommendation.
Got a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
I have one or two comments to make, if I could. James,
Yes, sir.
when we started out planning and zoning, because, you know, I was very much involved in it, we said that when you have a place such as this, that we need to go ahead and zone those commercial, because we know that's what it's going to be. Have you thought?
Yeah, and in this situation, going back to our records, this was a very, very small area. Occasionally, they would have storage buildings for sale out there. So it wasn't like a full-scale commercial operation. So it wasn't zoned general commercial to begin with. But we do feel like it is an appropriate area. We didn't pre-zone areas, like going out on 264 East and saying this whole area should be general commercial. We haven't done that. We've gone through the rezoning process when people had requests to put certain activities out there on the land. So similar situation here. If there had been some actual larger scale commercial activity on the lot, we probably would have gone ahead and had that zone general commercial at the beginning.
Okay, so that's your reason. I know we
That is the
talked
reason.
about that. That's been a long time ago. And we did that on some of them, I know, because I pushed for it in my era.
Any further discussion? Let's vote. Okay, we have another public hearing, and this is a proposed change to our subdivision ordinance recommended by our planning department and our planning board and our planning department. And Mr. Rhodes, you can present that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most of you have been on the board for a while and recognize that our subdivision ordinance does spell out certain provisions for the maintenance of subdivision streets. Typically, we either have proposed public streets or proposed private streets. What we'll be dealing primarily with tonight are public streets, although it will also clarify some language intended for the private streets too. In particular, the process for public streets, and just to set the stage, we have had at the planning board level some of our experts come in and talk to us from NCDOT and also local surveyor that also has done some development activity here in the county to kind of set the stage and talk about some of the issues that are prevalent in our areas, especially with subdivision activity. What we did do is kind of do a rehash of what's required from NCDOT's perspective as far as the process for accepting state-maintained roads. And had a refresher course with our planning board about that, so we wanted to roll all that into the presentation tonight to let you know we'll be going through a two-phase process for some proposed amendments to our subdivision ordinance. What you're dealing with tonight is primarily to get us where we thought we were for the last 20 years or so. We've worked with legal staff to clarify some language and be very explicit about what the requirements of the developer are. So with that, tonight, we've had some problems as we've gone through the process to ensure that we can get DOT to take over the roads, or more particularly, try to get the developer to move forward with DOT's process. Some of the items that we've identified, the ordinance does not explicitly state the subdivider's responsibility. We do have a note that goes on the final plat that they sign, but it is not explicitly stated in the ordinance. There's no standard level of acceptable maintenance identified in the Pitt County subdivision ordinance, and there's some unclear enforcement measures. And plus, out in the field, there are plenty of problems in some of our subdivisions that have been out there for a while, last 20, 25 years, for example, where there has not been an effort to move forward with having DOT accept these for maintenance. What you see on the screen now is just one example, potholes. You can see where the edge of the road has started to kind of fall apart in some of the turn radii at some of the intersections. We have done a full-scale inventory of all the proposed public streets throughout the county. This was done this summer, and this is kind of the telltale results from that assessment. I guess the good news, over half of them are still in good shape or are relatively new and are still in top shape as far as NCDOT requirements. Some are in fair condition. That means they're going to need some improvement before taken over by DOT. Others are in what we consider poor condition. And you can see total, it's about 35 miles. And you can see for poor conditions, about 3 miles, about 10% of the total mileage is in poor condition. So that's kind of the results that we're seeing out there on the ground. So again, tonight we're going to try to be more explicit about the language going into the ordinance. This has been handled through our planning board. We've heard from some experts. We've tweaked some language. We're bringing that forward to you tonight. Phase 2, you'll probably see us back up here early next year when we need to look more specifically in how do we guarantee that we can have these roads taken over 10, 15 years or so from now if it takes a while for them to develop out as part of DOT's requirements. So tonight's language, and this is in your package tonight for consideration. Here's the explicit language with the assistance of our legal staff. It shall be the responsibility of the subdivider to prepare, construct, and maintain all street and street right-of-way improvements until such time as these are for public streets. Publicly dedicated streets are accepted for maintenance under NCDOT. It shall be the responsibility of the subdivider to formally petition NCDOT to adopt the roads and initiate the process for transferring maintenance. Secondly, for the privately dedicated roads, and this has been a long-standing process, we do require our homeowners association to be developed and recorded at the time the final plat's recorded. So with these privately developed privately dedicated roads are accepted by a duly formed and constituted homeowners association. And we've got certain provisions, certain language that needs to be in that, in those legal documents. Also, for the purposes of the ordinance, streets and street right-of-way improvements. Again, DOT, when they are looking to maintain the roadway, they're looking at the complete system. That includes the roadside ditches and everything that's within the right-of-way. So it shall include the street right-of-way improvements, and shall include the road surface, road base course, and associated drainage improvements. Also, additional information about the acceptable levels of maintenance. As you've seen on one of the slides I showed earlier, there are some problems with some of the roads. So at what time can planning staff go out and say to the developer, you are actually in non-compliance with the ordinance? So what we've had to do is walk through several steps and actually cite what some of these issues are. So under acceptable levels of maintenance, the subdivider shall maintain roads in accordance with DOT minimum construction standards for subdivision roads, and that is an actual pamphlet that DOT puts out, so it's something we can lay our hats on as far as what the requirements are. There has been a little change in this after the review by the manager, and that's shown in red, but the remainder of the language is exactly what the planning board has brought forward. The following are examples of what may constitute a violation of this ordinance by the subdivider for failing to properly maintain the subdivision streets: more than 2 potholes, over 4 inches in depth, greater than 12 inches. Something that's quantifiable, something that we can measure, something that we can get out there in the field and ensure that these are not major issues. If it's something minor, we won't be going after the developer necessarily, but once it gets to a certain size, a certain point of deterioration, we will. Any pothole or road surface deterioration over 24 inches in diameter. Pavement cracking, which is also a major indication there is something wrong with the subsurface. We've got some details there. Major ruts alongside the road, and the drainage issues, which is always an issue when DOT goes to look at these sites for consideration for taking onto their system. And then any other condition involving the road or road right-of-way that the subdivision administrator has determined to cause an impediment to traffic flows, create an unsafe condition, or damage a motor vehicle. So whatever that is, we want to make sure that we can also remove it. With this, as I've mentioned, the planning board did review this at a public hearing on November the 26th, voted unanimously to bring forward a positive recommendation on this language. Legal staff has also reviewed the language and recommends approval. So we're recommending a public hearing for the commissioners at this point.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
James, all right, have you had the developers to put their 2 cents worth in on this? This is very important that they agree with you what is being done.
What we have done, this has probably been televised on the planning board meetings for the last 3 months. We've also sent this out to the surveyors and engineers, and they're typically the agents for these developers. To be quite honest, there's not many active developments out in the county right now, but we have sent it to the surveyors and engineers that help design these plans for
So
submittal.
they are familiar with it. All right, the next thing now, right across from Welcome Middle School, there's you know what I'm talking about. There's a road, and I talked about this some 5, 6, 7 years ago. There's a shortcut that you take from the Briley Road to Highway 13 and 11.
Right.
That is where we have a problem with drainage. We tried to get DOT to take over that road at that time, and the reason we tried to get them to do that is because the school buses ride that road, and going to going to North Pitt School, they cut through there because they don't know how to go out there to the intersection.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about, don't you? I go that way. Been that way for me. Now, these roads that were fixed, not now, we know that DOT has got to be so wide. They've got to have the ditches and everything. It's been that way for 20 years. All right. But the problem is the potholes there, or evidently the asphalt is not thick enough for them to take and to do that. And that's in the city of Greenville, by the way, I
It's
think.
in the ETJ, yes.
Well, they put a pumping station there anyway. But anyway, Melvin, you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
All right, and those people have been concerned about that for years. Now, why can't we at this time try to work that in to help those people in that subdivision? I mean, school buses,
What it will
everybody
take-
goes through that.
And I really think that's phase 2. We're dealing with phase 1 tonight, but phase 2 will be coming back to talk about these existing subdivisions. The language before you tonight is everything moving forward when new developments come through for review. Phase 2, we're going to look at some possibilities for assisting some of these developments that already have problems and there's not a developer to fall back on.
Right, and they are still building. They built one or two on that road not long ago. But anyway, James, I would like to take you out there. So you
I have
already
been
know
out
what-
there.
All right, so you've been there. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
And I think this board ought to take and get behind it, and let's see if we can't do something about it. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I got 2 or 3 more places, but we'll
Okay.
get to that later.
Yep.
Open the public hearing.
Well, they wanted to ask him a question, so I was going to let him do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Commissioner James. There's one, Scott, you're familiar with Imperial Estates.
Yes.
It's down on the same area, and a lot of citizens have complained about the drainage problem. You went down there, James.
Been there.
And so, with what you're saying, if this would be comprehensive enough in the phase 2, to include that, I think this would be a meaningful project.
Right, but don't want to be confused here that some of the issues in Imperial Estates deal more with an overall drainage issue. Yeah, there are probably some issues with the road right-of-way, but there's some more serious issues with the development and not having an appropriate outlet for the drainage there. So I won't say that our Phase 2 is intended to cover quite that scale, but we can look at it.
It would cover some.
Could assist. I won't say it will perfect it.
Mr. I want to have an input from these people, these surveyors, and it's very important.
I am sure that they will give their input. They are, several of the developments have already given significant input on this subject. That's one of the reasons this was brought back to the planning board and is before us this evening. The problem is going to be, what do we do with those streets that are there now that are in need of repair? This procedure will look at going forward, and that's going to be a challenge. Glenn, did you have something?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very quick. James, when I was looking in here about, and I could have missed it if you said it, that's very possible, but when it talks about the acceptable levels of maintenance and what would constitute a violation, and how do we enforce it? Would that be a citation type thing, or would it be a civil action?
It's a civil penalty at this point.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay,
And that
now-
language is already in our ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
So now I declare the public hearing open. Is anyone signed up to speak in favor of this?
There are 3 people signed up. I think the last 2 maybe are really meant for public addresses to the board, but the first person that signed up on this list is Wayne Meads.
Okay, come forward. And state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
For public hearings, we allow 5,
5, very good.
and I'll keep your time.
Hi, my name is Wayne Meads. I live in Greenville, 1302 Fantasia Street, Greenville. But I have some financial interests in, and have had some financial interests in some of these subdivisions you're talking about. First of all, I'd like to commend the board and staff for taking on what's going to be a tough issue, but it's long overdue. I don't know how many of you get out and ride around through the subdivisions, but I deal more with the less affluent, and I can tell you that they don't have the resources to hold these developers accountable, or to fix the problems, or to maintain the streets. Now, they bought these lots because it had a plat that said developer's gonna maintain it. Now, the developer knew what he was signing up for. He just doesn't want to deliver, in many cases. It's money out of his pocket. I mean, I can't honestly say I blame him, but the bottom line is, when he sells that last lot,
Stupid.
he's interested in, he's gone. He's on to the next development. So, when I first decided to come to this meeting, I didn't realize that it was a 2-phase project. The first phase, of course, is very, very important. Let's get the barn door shut, and then deal with the horses that got out, I guess. But honestly, I've been around developing for many years, and I don't think that you're going to have anything short of requiring a bond that's going to prevent the problem down the road. And I think it's good to talk to the developers and ask them, but then you need to be talking to the people who own the lots and who are going to be saddled with the maintenance. The developers aren't going to be interested in proposing something that's going to hold them accountable. I'm sorry, but I don't think so. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to speak for or against this issue?
Mr. Chairman, there's 2 people signed up, but they're also signed up identically on the public address of the board. We have Camellia Staten and Sandra Ebron. I think there maybe are more for regular public addresses, but not the street issue, street maintenance.
Does anyone else like to speak on the street issue? If not, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I waited before I wanted to ask a question. He hit the nail on the head, and it goes to the enforcement portion of this. A lot of builders go bankrupt or go out of business, and without some kind of money in escrow, how are you ever going to hold them accountable? So should there not be something in the ordinance that provides for an escrow or some guarantee that they will have the financial resources if they go bankrupt or out of business, that money is still there to be able to take care of it, so that it doesn't end up on, I'm going to say, in the county's doorstep.
And those details will come in the next phase of this.
We're already, staff's researching already. We've talked with folks in Johnston County. It appears that Wake County may be one of the few counties that has something like that in place. So we'll be bringing more of that back.
Okay. Any further discussion? Do I have a motion?
So move.
I second it.
Okay, let's vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. We have two more presentations, resolution of appreciation for our past chairman, Beth Ward, and resolution of appreciation for our past vice chairman, Jimmy Garris. Can I have a motion that we approve both of these?
So move.
So moved.
Let's vote. So, Mrs. Ward and myself,
Yeah, we
along
go
with the
down
manager, will go forward.
Hang up on him.
You get to congratulate each other.
That's right.
When we get the gang up on Scott.
Lay it on him.
There's got to be something.
Board of Commissioners honors both the former chairman and vice chairman of the Board of Commissioners, and there's a prepared resolution for each. If you will allow me, I will read both. We'll start with Ms. Ward first.
Leave out all the whereases.
Okay. Office of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners, resolution of appreciation honoring Beth B. Ward as chairman. Whereas Ms. Ward has served faithfully and honorably as chairman of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners from December 2011 to December 2012. Whereas Ms. Ward provided the Board of Commissioners with steadfast leadership and commitment as chairman. Whereas the Board of Commissioners expresses appreciation to Ms. Ward for her guidance, organization, leadership skills, and commitment to service during her time as chairman. Whereas Ms. Ward has, through her attentiveness and devotion, exhibited concern for the overall improvement and quality of life for the citizens of Pitt County. Whereas Ms. Ward's term as chairman, she served also as a liaison on the Pitt County Memorial Hospital Board of Trustees / Medical Center Board of Trustees and the Pitt County Community College Board of Trustees. And whereas some of the organizational accomplishments of the Board of Commissioners during the past year included the final implementing steps to transition the county's fire tax protection districts to fire tax service districts, implementation of a new radio communications paging system, receiving the award designation as one of the 100 best communities for young people for the 4th consecutive time in the completion of the 2012 reevaluation project. Now therefore be resolved, the members of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners commends Beth B. Ward for her efficient leadership and outstanding service as chairman of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners, adopted the 17th day of December 2012, signed by current chairman Jimmy Garris, and attested by the clerk Kimberly Hines. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have a like resolution for Mr. Garris serving in the role as vice chairman before stepping up to the current role of chairman. And if you'll allow me, I will read it. It's a similar resolution, but it deserves reading as well. Whereas Jimmy Garris has served faithfully and honorably as vice chairman of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners from December 2011 to December 2012. Whereas Mr. Garris has provided the Board of Commissioners with steadfast leadership and commitment as vice chairman. Whereas the Board of Commissioners expresses their appreciation to Mr. Garris for his guidance, organization, leadership skills, and commitment to service during this year. And whereas during Jimmy Garris's term as vice chairman, he also served on the Pitt County Development Commission, EMS Oversight Plan Committee, and the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Whereas some of the organizational accomplishments of the Board of Commissioners during the past year included the final implementing steps to transition the county's fire tax protection district to fire tax service districts, implementing the radio paging system, receiving the award for the 4th time as the 100 best communities for young people, and again completing the 2012 reevaluation project. Now therefore be it resolved, the members of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners commend Jimmy Garris for his efficient leadership and outstanding service as vice chairman of the board for the calendar year 2012, adopted the 17th day of December 2012, And this one is signed by the current Vice Chairman, Mark W. Owens, as Vice Chairman, and again attested by the Clerk, Kimberly Hines. Would you like to present that?
No, you may present it.
Okay. All right.
Let me say also, I would like to express my appreciation for the outstanding leadership that Commissioner Ward gave us last year, and I'm sure that I will be relying upon some of that leadership this coming year. Look forward to working with you.
I do myself. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
So we'll continue on our agenda this evening, and now we have our public addresses to the board. And I believe you said 2 people had signed up.
Yes, sir. 2 people signed up, and 1 gentleman came in late and asked to be added as well. But if Camellia Staten will come forward first.
Mr. Chairman, as we say, prior to all public addresses, we have all comments on matters of public concern. Each person for public addresses will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address prior to speaking. All comments should be informative and constructive, and inappropriate comments, including profanity or personal attacks, will not be tolerated.
Good afternoon. My name is Montana Thomas, and I live at 235 Paladin Drive, Apartment 5, Greenville, North Carolina, 27834.
Hi, my name is Sandra Eben. I stay in Winterville.
Okay, you may proceed.
I'm here to speak on behalf of the Child Care Division. I'm currently an employee at Above and Beyond Child Care here in Greenville, and I'm speaking on behalf of the parents and the lead teachers and stuff. I'm a lead teacher there, and I've heard that child care has become an issue with like funds to continue after school and Head Start programs, and all of the parents have mentioned that they would love for to get funds to continue to get child care for their children in the afternoon, and the Head Start programs are very important to the parents. And as far as me having my degree in early childhood, I would like to say that I'm very passionate about working with children, and I would love to see it continue also. Getting a degree in early childhood was a goal that I had years that I written down and just kept it before me, and now I've received my degree in early childhood. So I'm very passionate about working in with children. And I would just like to continue to see that it continue and that they get funds. And this could be something that would be corrected. So children will be able to have after-school care and get into programs that would benefit them before they get in school.
Hi, I'm Sandra Ebern, and I have 2 grandsons, a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old that I'm raising. And I'm concerned about the cutting the 8-year-old because where are they going to go at, Daycare is already expensive, and then it's another expense to me as a grandmother. And I wonder why Pitt County the only one that got cut. Can anyone elaborate on that with me? Because I don't, I'm told that Pitt County the only one that got cut. And a lot of parents are concerned because of child care helps us out, single parents. And it's very expensive. And we just need some help with this. We want our kids to stay in after school. There's a lot of crime going on, and I feel like the other kids are going to be out and about. Parents not going to know where they're at when they're working and stuff, and that's going to be a big issue with our children. And those are my concerns.
Okay, thank you very much for bringing those concerns before us this evening. What we normally do, we don't respond to public addresses on the evening of the meeting, but we will have our manager to look into those issues and get back with you. Is that fair enough?
Well, I can report back to the board.
Okay. And we will have him do that.
Okay,
Thanks.
Okay, next we have Camelia Staten. Was she going to come forward, or was she part of that?
That was her.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That was it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry. The gentleman who came in late, Don Cavallini, if I'm pronouncing that correct?
I wish we could let the public say, at least say that it's not, Pitt County has nothing to do with it. It's important.
First of all, let me thank you for allowing me, despite being late, to address the board. I don't know whether anyone has said this yet, since I did come in late, but I think my comments and the comments of the ladies that preceded me have particular poignance today because of what happened in Newtown, Connecticut. And not to be at all, I just think that we have to really think about our children first, because they are our future. And I am just baffled how one county, and we've had it on good notice from personnel at Department of Social Services, that in fact it was the county commission in their budget that decided not to fund the 8-year-olds and older for after school. Now, you know, I know that the tradition is not for the commissioners to answer, but you do, as commissioners, and I am a taxpayer. My name is Don Cavallini. I live at 101 Lancaster Drive. Despite my accent, I've been here 27 years. I'm now retired, and I'm quite outraged that we're the only county that somehow didn't find it within our budget to allow 8-year-olds and older to go someplace safe. Consider how important safe places are now in light of Newtown, Connecticut, and other things like it. Someplace safe after they get out of school. It's unconscionable. So I hope you correct this before it goes into effect, as we understand it, December 31st. The two adjoining counties, Edgecombe and Nash, have no such cutback. It's unwarranted, and the children need this. Social Services subsidizes what is a very expensive endeavor. And these parents can't bring their children to the after-school care without that subsidy. I, as a taxpayer, yes, Mr. Colson, I am willing to pay more property tax. I own my land, and in fact, I own another property where my sister-in-law lives. I would pay more property tax on those two properties in a heartbeat if these children could be seen in a safe place after school. Thank you.
Thank you. We will respond to that later.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address us? There's no one else that signed up. Okay, we will move to our items for report. We have several items for report. The first one is our manager's report. Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Just to, I know the board normally has a policy of not responding to the speakers, but on that issue, that question did come up earlier in the day. Commissioner McLaughlin had called and asked me about it, and staff was able to look partially into that. And what I'm informed by staff is that DSS across the state has sent out notices to all counties. This is just not a Pitt County decision. And we need to keep in mind that there are actually very little local dollars that go into daycare subsidies or daycare funding. These are federal and state dollars, and also dollars that come through the Smart Start program through the Edgecombe Nash Martin Pitt Smart Start program. And yes, there is a plan put together for the reduction of slots due to the reduction in federal and state dollars. This is not a local budget. The county commissioners didn't vote on daycare funds directly. Dollars are passed from the state, from the federal to the state to the local, and they're implemented locally, but they come from a higher source.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I did receive some comments reference that, and certainly I feel the concern that these members voiced. However, I did mention that this was not a county issue, it was more of a federal issue that's passed down to the state. I think Mrs. Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Manager, Dwayne Holder is going to be looking into some response to some of this, but I can understand the concern, but it's not the county mandating in this area.
Well, I think we all understand the concern and surely sympathize with it, but again, they are federal and state dollars, and they are being cut everywhere on lots of different items.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Yes.
on the Social Service Board. I can answer them all, but I don't want to do it tonight. But
Okay, fine.
somebody's been
Okay.
ill-informed. What we're trying to do is serve as many of these people as we can, and you do that by level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. And these people, we're trying to get them to go to level 3 so we can serve more people. We are on it. Believe me, we are.
Very good. And
He knows we're on it, too.
as Commissioner James has said, he is our board-appointed representative on the Department of Social Services.
But we need
Board.
Mr. Perry. He's the one that.
Okay. Let's continue on with our items for report, and Mr.
Okay.
Manager, you are the first one to give a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again. Item A, the next meeting dates of the Board of Commissioners, January 14th, will be only one meeting that month due to the New Year's and the Martin Luther King holiday. That month will be January 14th, 9 a.m. here in your meeting room. Then the first meeting in February will be February 4th at 9 a.m. Item B, the legislative delegation breakfast meeting that we have calendared for January the 11th is going to be moved to 1 week later to January the 18th. There was a conflict with the, I guess, the incoming legislators have a orientation session at the School of Government that day on the 11th, so we've talked to them and have moved that back to the 8th. Same time, same place. Item C, in this year's budget deliberations and budget workshops, staff had talked to you about the concept of looking at the two different communications center in the county, our 911 center that's located here in this office building, the sheriff's communication, which is located downtown on 3rd Street within the sheriff's department, and conducting an analysis to see if there are any economies of scale, efficiencies in terms of combining the two operations into one. Staff is in the process of doing this analysis, working with the sheriff, working with Noel Lee and his staff to bring back a full report that looks at all the different angles of this analysis. It may recommend consolidation, it may recommend keeping it as is, or it may recommend something entirely different. But didn't want to let you know that was a item that came up in budget, and want to let you know that is progressing, and we'll be bringing that forward to you probably early in the new year. Item D is another change. We had January 14th down for your group photograph. We're moving this to February the 18th due to one commissioner won't be able to be here for January 14th, so we're just going to push that back 1 month to the 18th. A couple of other items real quick. A good news item. This is not on the agenda. As the board is aware, for last year, fiscal year 11-12, our PATS transportation system, the Pitt Area Transit System, we were had our funding suspended last year for the most part of the year, trying to get some programs and procedures in line that needed to be, they were in place but needed to be revamped. And in lieu of that, we had about $330,000 worth of funding that was put in abeyance or to the side. And we've been working with NCDOT. I would like to put a thank you to our NCDOT board member Lee McNary, who helped us through our writing, calling, emails, going to DOT, meeting with the Chief of Staff, Bobby Lewis, in Raleigh to get this issue straightened out. DOT has finally agreed with us many, many, many months and much time and effort by staff later that we are, in effect, should be retroactively given those dollars, and they have committed to doing that. So that's a good news item for our PAT system. Another item, had received a phone call this weekend asking if Dr. Reep would be here tonight to possibly address the board. She was scheduled to be here, but we had pushed her off to the January 14th because we have a full agenda. That was obviously before we knew about the Newtown incidents. Talked to her today. She did hold a press conference today in this building at 1:45 and has released comments on that. And obviously in regards to the preparation of the Pitt County School District and system in terms of safety and in regard to the situation. She will be happy to address any questions you may have in January or before if you'd like to field those through me. I know there's also a sergeant in the audience from the Pitt County Sheriff's Office that is either works with or is over the SRO School Resource Officers Program that was willing to make comments if the board so desired about, I guess, from the Sheriff's Office, their perspective of preparedness in schools. Okay, moving on, one last item. The county has received grant funding approval for our Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. This is for the Neuse River Regional Plan. This is a multi-county plan to come up with our hazard mitigation plan. We'll be bringing that back to you for a budget amendment for funding at a future meeting. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Very good, thank you. Does the deputy want to give a report?
Pardon me?
Okay, fine. Thank you. We will move on to our next item for report. We're very honored to have Dr. Herman with us this evening. He is the CEO at Vidit, and we have an annual report from the CEO at Vidit each year, and we are pleased to have him with us this evening. I believe this is your first solo visit with us.
This is my first. I'm flying solo tonight, Mr.
Very
Chairman.
good. Well, we're glad to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. As you know, through the county transfer agreement to Pitt County Memorial Hospital and now Vidant Health, there are certain financial requirements that we meet under that agreement, and I'm here tonight to report on those requirements. The primary financial requirements are, number one, that the annual debt service be at least 1.5 times the debt. This year it's 4.5 times the debt, so we meet that requirement. Our annual cash cushion ratio must be at least 1.4. It's 11.6 in fiscal year 2012. We must make an annual payment in lieu of taxes and ad valorem. In this year, in 2012, $1,798,198 will go from Vidant Health to Pitt County. We also make a payment for Medicaid reimbursement within the county, and within this year it's $609,574. And then also under that agreement, we also continue to support the school nurses in the Pitt County schools. At that level this year it was $1.179 million. So the total payments since 1998 for each component, payment of lieu of taxes is $22.1 million. Medicaid reimbursement is $8.0 million. The consideration payments that were made at the time the transfer agreement was executed, $30 million, $15 million at the transfer date, and an additional $15 million over the subsequent 2 years. And the school nursing program funding has been $8.9 million since 1998, for a total of $69.0 million. In addition, we are proud to say that we see all comers to our hospital regardless of their ability to pay. Our total charges, our total care at charges for 2012 was $171.6 million, bringing the total since 1998 to $1.3 billion. There's also some additional good news I'd like to share with you. We have been expanding. We are opening up another 48 beds at Vidant Medical Center here in Pitt County, and including expanding our support for the additional hospitals that we've taken into our system that provides additional jobs here in Pitt County. The total for 2012 is the 374 FTEs additional at Vidant Medical Center and another 136 at Vidant Corporate here in Greenville to support the system. We have new FTEs in this region over 2012 of 803. What we have done recently is partnered with ECU to take a look and say what is the economic impact for each of the jobs that we bring on board to Vidant Health. We'll be hearing a report at our board meeting tomorrow regarding that economic impact statement, and for each 100 jobs that we provide additional within Pitt County, we provide another 84 subsequent jobs somewhere in the economy of Pitt County. We're very proud to do that, and we hope to continue to be able to grow Vidant Health going forward to support the economy not just of Pitt County, but of the region. That ends my prepared remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, yes.
Mr. James.
How much money did the hospital make this year?
$112.2 million, sir.
Well, that's what concerns me a great deal. You weren't involved in it.
Oh,
Well, you might have been. If you are, I'm really on you.
okay. Yes.
There was a clinic in Bethel.
I'm sorry?
There was a clinic in Bethel.
That's correct, sir.
Had been there ever since the Broder School of Medicine, been there for many years. Cooperated, did all they could to help the hospital. But yet, we didn't have enough money to keep them moving. But at the same time, we went to Pine Tops, as you know, since you know about Bethel, and you built a large family practice center there.
That's correct.
But yet you couldn't do it here for the citizens here that needed it very badly, and they need it because of the elderly people that were there. Since you know about that, what would you have done, or would you have done this very same thing?
We looked very carefully at that, and the number of people that we're seeing over the last few years within Bethel averaged about 500 visits a year within the city of Bethel. Pine Tops is different. We keep 5 family medicine doctors full-time busy at Pine Tops to serve that area. When you look at being able to, number 1, keep a clinic open, number 2, to be able to pay the people at the clinic, and to move forward with that and keep them busy, Bethel just does not support that.
You know that I was born and raised there, and I'm very familiar with the area that you're talking about the 10 people. It stayed closed certain days during the week. Did you know that?
Yes, I did, sir.
All right, so they didn't have an opportunity to even see patients at those particular times. And, well, we won't go into that any further, but it hurt a lot of people, especially in that. And when you say you made $112 million, and yet you can't help your own people there, and that's where it all came about through Pitt County. And certainly, I don't blame you for that. We appoint the trustees, and we have the majority of these trustees that we appoint. We expect them to take and look out for the citizens of Pitt County. That's what they were elected and put there for. The next thing that I have written down here, I don't want to be the only one now to take it to do this. All right, the profit that you made, what was that amount of taxes? And I questioned the manager and so forth. I know you all have bought up all of Doctors Park and all of this area, and you say that you pay ad valorem taxes. How much ad valorem taxes, Dr. Herman, did you say?
$1,798,198 in fiscal year 2012.
All right, and that includes the amount of money in lieu of taxes.
That is correct.
I hope you're.
Well, that is the amount in lieu of taxes. There's additional amounts, including Medicaid reimbursement of $609,574.
We appreciate that very much, too.
And then the nurses are $1.179 million.
And that's where I want the nurses to, not from you, but from the Board of Education, as to how many nurses are being hired and so forth. Because I was in the school system, and I know at the beginning it was about 7 or something like that on that. I'll stop there. Because I know there are others that want to question. So.
I want to, first of all, commend Dr. Herman and welcome him to Pitt County as the new CEO. However, I think that this concern that Commissioner James is bringing up is an issue that is vital to this board in terms of keeping up with the pulse of Vidant Health. And certainly I, as a board trustee, has been trying to do that. Dr. Herman, I don't know how often you're planning to appear before this board, but I think, Mr. Chairman, that maybe on a at least every 6 months, a quarterly basis, that this would kind of lend some clearer understanding and some progressive status report as to what the board is doing, and because I think that as I see it, we're certainly transparent in terms of meeting the needs and concerns of this board. So I would appreciate, I think, from as a county commissioner, from this perspective, to see a member, Dr. Herman, or yourself, to come before this board and sort of outline some of the things that you are doing on a regular basis.
And I think it's important to address some of the commissioners' concerns. 3 years ago, we did not hire any physicians to provide primary care within Eastern North Carolina. Right now, we have over 350 physicians and nurses that we've hired to support primary care in Eastern North Carolina. So we have a commitment to that primary care in Eastern North Carolina. Now, there are thresholds about where we can put them, and we try to place them where they can do the most good and they can see the most patients. So we do try to support, and we do support primary care in Eastern North Carolina. One of the reasons that this is one of the least healthy places in Eastern North Carolina is because of access. We're trying to address that access through some of the funds that we do. That $112.2 million doesn't go into a bank account somewhere. It's reinvested for health care within this region. And a large amount of that investment over the last 3 years is providing physicians and nurse practitioners to provide primary care services within this region. The largest barrier to health in this region at this particular point in time is access. So our investments are being made in access. The clinic that was run by ECU was an ECU clinic. We did take a look at that and see if we could possibly keep that open. Given the condition of the building and the number of patients to be served, we did make a decision not to do that. We made a decision to provide primary care services other places, including here in Greenville. One of the challenges that we have is that when our patients are discharged from the hospital, there is no family physician or other primary care provider to take care of them. We have hired some within Greenville to do just that. That's their primary responsibility.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I was told that it was not the hospital, but the Broder School of Medicine was the one that owned the clinic at Belfast, and they're the ones that really closed it down.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct.
But I want to say this to you, though. I know the hospital is very valuable to Pitt County. I and the citizens of Pitt County appreciate all that you all do. But my primary concern is to make sure that our citizens here in Pitt County are taken care of, just like they are in Edgecombe and these other counties. And we don't want them to be left out. And we felt like that we were being left out on this particular deal. I hate to say it, and they still feel very bitter about it. And maybe you can, somebody can help us out.
Well, we still do take a look at the healthcare needs within the region, and we make constant investments within the healthcare needs within this region. Since October 1st, we've brought another 68 providers into Vidant Health to provide care for this region. Most of the resources for Vidant Health go to Pitt County, by far, sir.
Well, they've opened the clinic up over there again now, so thank goodness.
Okay, Commissioner Owens?
Dr. Herman, I have not been in this community as long as Mr. James, but and I understand his concerns with his remarks to you. What bothers me is the fact that you made a remark that we're probably one of the lowest communities as it pertains to health care or problem sickness, I suppose would be. My terminology is probably not proper.
Health levels, correct.
But I think that you're working on that.
Very much so, sir.
I think when you look at the statistics that you just gave us about what is coming through this county, what is coming through this totality of this system is very well taken, and I think progress is being made. I'm appreciative of that, and I'm sure that the people of this county are appreciative. It's not only the health issue, but when you look at those statistics that you gave us, it's just astronomical to me that this entity or those entities that y'all are functioning with in conjunction with the good health that you're providing are a savior for this community.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Any further questions?
I just would like to thank you again for coming tonight. And as a liaison to the board, I appreciate all that's going on over there. Sometimes it's growing to such an extent that it's hard to get your head wrapped around. But I truly believe that you do have, the board and the people working over there do have the interests of Eastern North Carolina in the forefront, and I thank you for that.
We have the best providers, the best people that work at Vidant Health that I've ever worked with. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for coming before us this evening. Okay, the next item is our November 2012 tax collection report. Ms. Booker?
Good evening. The Pitt County combined tax collection rate for the fiscal year to date for real and personal property and registered motor vehicles is 65.84%, which is a slight increase compared with the rate 1 year ago of 65.40%. And tax administration continues to pursue all outstanding collections through the necessary enforcement remedies available through the North Carolina Machinery Act.
Any questions for Mrs. Booker? If not, I'll entertain a motion
I'd like
to
to move
accept
for
the report.
acceptance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Let's vote.
Thank you.
Next item is our monthly financial report on the general fund from Dwayne Holder.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Board members. Before you, included in your agenda packet, you'll have a monthly financial report on our general fund financial activities as of November the 30th. I will just bring to note that this is a new format that you are receiving. You will receive it on a monthly basis going forward. Will be a mechanism for us to track how the general fund is performing throughout the year. As of November, you'll see that the total revenues to date are have been collected at a rate of 48.9%. Our expenditures, we've spent 41.8% of our total expenditure budget through November. Also included in the report for comparative purposes is fiscal year 2012 activity tracking the same period of time. Our revenues are tracking 1.5% higher than they did 1 year ago at this time, and we're spending 0.8% less of our budget than we did 1 year ago at this time. At this time, I'll ask for any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Holder? If
Good
not,
first report. I said good first report.
Yeah,
First impressions, hopefully first impressions are the last.
And the
one.
information
Right.
was good.
I like to say we're on the right track. We're bringing in more money and we're spending less, and that's what we got to do if we're going to hold those taxes down, which a lot of us intend to do.
very good. Any further questions or comments? Do I have a motion to accept the
Move
report?
acceptance.
Second.
Okay, let's vote. And our next item is also from Mr. Holder, the presentation of the comprehensive annual financial report. Mr. Holder?
It is with both pleasure and pride that I bring before you tonight Ms. Marcy Spivey with the audit firm Martin Starnes and Associates. And she and I are going to present on the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2012. I will just make a note that this is a financial report that's inclusive of audited financial statements that have been approved by the local government commission for publication. And additionally, this report has been submitted to the Government Financial Officers Association for consideration of Pitt County's 22nd consecutive year of being observed for the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And we are very optimistic that we will qualify for that 22nd consecutive year of consideration for that high award. So at this point, I'll hand the presentation over to Ms. Spivey, and I will be back later in the presentation.
Good evening. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank you for allowing Martin Starnes and Associates this short amount of time to come in and give you the results of your audit report. I am another flying solo first time this year. If you'll remember, Brian Starnes, a partner of the firm, was doing the presentation last year, and I'm a director, so we didn't go too far. When we start with our audit highlights, and I'm sorry, I can't really see.
It's on the screen.
Oh, right in front of me. Okay. Here we go. We'll start with the good news. There are 2 points that we really want to make, and that is that you had an unqualified opinion again in the current year, and that's the only thing that you ever want and what's allowed. And then we always have a cooperative staff here. We don't just work with the finance department. When we come out during different times in the year, we work with your social services, and we go to the tax collection offices. So we work all around the county. We have exceptionally good cooperation, people that are dedicated, and when we ask for information, they're on it. And it's a great audit for us. We will talk a lot about the fund balance, and the fund balance being in the general fund. One of the things I wanted to point out again is last year there was a big change in the way that the fund balance was stated in your financial statements. There was a new GASB 54, and all it really did was change. Basically, it changed in these steps that you see, where we used to just see unrestricted. Now we see all these different classifications where we might have non-spendable being the highest level of restriction. We'll go to restricted, which is just external, or when you borrow money and grants, those are restricted, all the way down to the least assigned, which is you're unassigned at all. There are just no external or internal, basically tag marks on that one yet. I want to take just a minute to talk about our audit process. This isn't necessarily in a slide, but I thought you might find it interesting to note that we actually come out and we work with the county several different times during the year. And while we might be here once and you see us once, because the county is such a large county, all the grants that you get have to have compliance performed on them. So we go to DSS and we do compliance work to make sure that the rules that are set out are being followed. We check internal controls, so we go to the tax department and check to see that that is being operated as it says it is. So we come out and we do that different type of work, and then we come out to final, where we do the financial report and we get this prepared. And then this is our last part, where we come out and do our presentation, but it's very cyclical. As soon as we're finished with this, we start right into the next planning period, and we do our analytics based on what we know and what we think might change. When we talk about fund balance, we'll go back to this GASB 54. This is a change in the way that it's calculated and the way it looks. You start with that total fund balance. Then we talk about the non-spendable items, which are those things not in cash form. Prepaids. Basically, prepaids is the most part of it, including your taxes prepaid. Then we look at that stabilization by state statute, which is also not available. So when we look at that available fund balance, and it'll be on the next slide with your real numbers, that's the amount that you're able to use for your budgeting. And what's so important about this number is the basis for what the LGC calculates your percentage on. So for Pitt County, the total fund balance was $24,220,000. The non-spendable section was only $96,000. Stabilization by state statute was $6.8 million. So your available fund balance is $17.264 million. In 2011, you'll note that it was only $15 million. So you've had an increase in your available fund balance. That is because your fund balance actually increased in the current year. When we look at this percentage, again, I'm going to keep talking about GASB 54 because it skews your results just a bit. In 2010 was the first year that we started going with this, so what I really want to point out is the trend, not so much the number, except for the current year and prior year number. If you see this trend, this is a thing I know that we talked about a lot last year. It went down almost $3 to $4 million. in those consecutive years. So it's really great that we've broken that trend and are now heading off in the correct direction. I know there was a lot of discussion about what needed to be done, and it looked like the board really stuck to it and did what needed to be done to get that turned around and on the right track. I will point out that other units of your size, I looked at the LGC's website to see who they consider to be your peers, and their fund balance is right about 22%. However, those people, when the LGC puts this thing together, they don't necessarily look at which is a beach that should have a higher fund balance for emergency's sake. But I figured when you hear that and they talk about that with you, if you're talking to the LGC, they will talk about 22%, but don't feel like that has to be you. Oh, again, this was the attempt at putting 2009 in the same format as we would use now. We decided because we had reported something the prior years, we didn't really want to change it, and we wanted to get back to this number. That's why I was saying use the trend, not so much that number. So we moved it back to what had been reported in the prior year. When we look at our general fund summary, you can see in those past 2 years where the expenditures were far more than what your revenues were. We talked about that over those last couple of years, and you can see in the current year it looks the way that you would hope for it to look. I want to go back to one point on your calculation. That percentage that the LGC is looking at. When you do that calculation, it doesn't just include your expenditures that you'll see as a bottom line on Exhibit C. It actually includes your transfers. We include the transfers because your transfers are generally your debt service. So if you didn't have a debt service funds, those would still be part of your general fund. So that is included in that calculation if you try and go back to look at it. We look at your major revenue funds. When you look at your ad valorem taxes, that 59%, that's pretty average, especially for your counties and your size. Again, I was looking on a LGC's website to see what their pie looks like, and it's very similar to this in the other counties that are like you. We'll look at each of these, the things that were the major changes and the major influencers of how this worked. You can see that your ad valorem taxes, these increased about $4 million over the prior year. I would say that about $3.3 million of this, or about a 4% increase, is a collections, which is not just the current year's collections, but all the year's collections in this slide. I understand that there was a change in the tax office. They were able to go out a little bit further, and they were collecting delinquent taxes at a far better rate. I actually looked back at the collection rates, and they've remained fairly stable for Pitt County. In 2009, they were 96.97, 2010, 97.11, 2011, 96.4, and then in 2012, 97.10. The average in your peer group is about 97%, so you're right with your group, and the lowest of your group being about 90.5%. When we look at these other taxes and licenses, this is basically your local option sales tax. This decreased slightly over the prior year, about $200,000. This may change in your current year because according to the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, they were talking about in the first part of the year, sales tax increased across the state, but they were expecting it to go back to a normal flow. So I read that their end result is they're thinking there might be an increase of about 2 to 3% over the year. When we talk about your restricted intergovernmental, this is generally the funding that you get for DSS and those other services. I call this the money with the strings attached because this is generally the items that you have very restricted items that you can spend it on. This was just a very slight increase over the prior year, only about $200,000. And approximately 20 million of this 26 million was direct funding for social services. When we talk about your expenditures, I kind of look at these different pieces of pie as your total expenditures were 124 million, and just these three sections, we cover 109 million. When we look at the general government, you notice that this is really keeping with the commitment of the board to stay in a flat budget and being mindful of the current economic conditions. This is a decrease of over $700,000. The majority of this is due to reduced capital outlay in your general funds. When we look at education, we see this as a constant support or consistent over the years. This slight decrease that you see is really due to reduced capital outlay in that current year as well. When we look at your public safety, this is also very consistent with the prior year, as it should be, unless the board decides that you're going to provide maybe fewer services. This one is probably going to be the most consistent. If you're going to do the same thing, it's probably going to cost the same amount. There may be other capital items that come out of this at some point, but that's very consistent with your prior year. You'll see that Human Services had a pretty good decrease as well. Part of this is the closure of the single county mental health program, which is still being covered by ECBH, but that for you right now is just a amount contributed. Another decrease in this department was there was a big section where bioterrorism costs that were the studies and everything that was being done here, the state took it back, so that was a big decrease in the human services section in the current year. And we're doing things a little bit differently this year. Last year it was just Brian up here talking, but now we're going to switch over and have Dwayne do some other analysis.
Just very quickly, the next section wanted to compare how we performed against our plans, our budget as compared to actual. And I think I went one too far. But the first slide, I actually clicked past it, but it was ad valorem taxes. Our budget for ad valorem taxes was $75.8 million. We collected $78 million, or 102.8% of our budget. Restricted intergovernmental, which again are those dollars that are primarily tied to human services, 28 million budgeted, 26.8 collected. That was 95.84% of budget. And a lot of those funds are directly tied to service provision. And if the service isn't provided, the funds won't be remitted. Other taxes and licenses, again, primarily local sales tax, 16.1, almost 16.2 budgeted, 16.3 collected, or 101.11% of budget. Our general government, which includes the traditional, and these are going to be expense slides, traditional units or function of primary government, 12.8 budgeted, 12.7 expended, or 98.74% of our budget. On education, we were 100% expended. We budgeted 39.2 and spent 39.2. Public safety, 30.6, almost $30.7 million budgeted, and 30.2 expended, or 98.66% of the budget. And then finally, human services, 42.3 budgeted, 39.2 expended, or 93% of that budgeted. Our summary, our revenues that were budgeted in last fiscal year, and this is the final budget, as the budget does undergo revisions throughout the year, 131.5, almost 0.6 revenues budgeted. We collected 101.07% of that budget, and we spent just over 97% of our budgeted expenditures for the year. In summary, I would just say that this financial performance for last fiscal year represents the end of a 3-year slide in our available fund balance. The board made it very clear last year that we had to do something to stop the trend, the negative trend in our fund balance, and we believe that last year was the start of a positive trend, even in the midst of this economic condition that we're in nationally. The strategies implemented by the board and staff are working. We believe that in keeping our expenditures tight with our improved revenue collections, we will continue. But that third bullet, we need to continue the positive trend. And I would just, in tandem, point you to that last bullet as well. We're still in a recession. We have a positive trend going, but we're definitely not out of the woods yet. This report is a good report, but it should not make us feel like we have arrived or that we're at the point where we need to be. So we need to be cautiously optimistic given the trends we have, but we need to stay the course. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Very good. Before we have any questions from our board members, I believe our manager wanted to make some comments.
Yes, first I'd like to thank Ms. Spivey and Dwayne for their presentations, but also wanted to note that everything that's been presented and talked about tonight deals with all of the last fiscal year, 11-12. All of the board's deliberations and planning for the new year, for July 1, all your budget workshops, the development and adoption of this year's budget, cutting the fund balance appropriation from $4.5 million down to $2.5 million, all that performance that's been going on since July 1, where we downsized the budget, will be talked about a year from now. So this is, hopefully this will be double good news. You have good news from how we completed the prior year, and now you've designed this year's budget, and we're in it, implementing it, kind of like the monthly financial report that Dwayne gave a few minutes ago, and we hope, I would like to be optimistic to think that we could build as much fund balance back a year from now, but that may be too optimistic. But at least I feel like we have a new ground floor budget we're working with. Everything's tracking. I think we did see one minor hole with the sheriff, with the federal inmate revenues coming in. But everything else, sales tax, ad valorem taxes, expenditures are pretty much tracking where we want them to be. So hopefully we are, in the new year, a year from now, we will build back a little more fund balance. I'm not sure if we'll have as much growth as we had this year, but maybe so.
And part of the intent of presenting the monthly financial report to you on a monthly basis is so that that will not be a surprise to anyone. We should be able to forecast with pretty good accuracy collectively how we're going to end up at the end of the year as we track it from month to month.
Okay, let me also thank both of you for this very good report. To me, one of the most important charts here was that fund balance percentage going back up, and I realized that was the 11 and 12 budget cycle, and what we want to do is make sure that in 12-13 that it continues to go up. And as our manager just said, we did discuss that extensively during our budget process, and hopefully we have plans in place to make that happen. Mr. James?
Yes, I took notice the year 2010, this might go to someone else, but tax collection, I believe, was 96 point something. What I'm interested in, though, and I want to compliment you all, tax department, you're going back and you're collecting that money. We said some years ago, Mr. Chairman, that once you get 8 years behind on your taxes, approximately they are, that we were going to be very aggressive in selling this stuff and clearing our books up. What percentage do we have of the taxpayers, as far as ad valorem taxes is concerned, that have not paid their taxes going back that far? Can you tell me that?
Not without running a report, but we report that back to you in February exactly.
Is it very many, or how do we stack up on that?
Ms. Booker, would you come up, please, so we can hear you?
Because this is the reason that we have gone up in your fund, in the balance fund, is because of this very thing, yes.
I do not have those reports with me, but I can very easily obtain those from the office and give you an exact figure on prior years for each
Well,
year.
have we got people who owe ad valorem taxes going back more, we'll say, than 8 years?
Yes, sir, we have them going back to 10 years.
But what was that we voted on that we would, Mr. Manager, do you remember? We did that some years ago.
I think you have a 2-year. We normally don't move into the most aggressive collection techniques until they're at least 2 years old, correct, Ms. Booker?
Well,
On
yeah, but these
the,
are
on the
10
current
years.
year, but when we bring you the report back in February after January, when they're delinquent for the current year, when they become due in January or past due in January, we give you each year a report with each year broken down. So I would not want to give you an incorrect figure without.
No,
running that
I don't
report.
want you to, and I didn't think you would know, but I think I want to compliment you all on that. That's the reason we're where we are today, is because now we're going out together, and if I'm going to pay my taxes, I expect other people to pay theirs.
Thank you. You have a good staff in place that works.
Yeah, well, I know you
diligently.
do, and but that to me is very, very important. And I'm like Commissioner Grass. I think we got to get that and hold it up. And the way we're going to do that is to make sure that we all pay our share that we owe to the DAO and so forth. That's the main thing I wanted to bring up.
Commissioner Owens.
Dwayne, pull back to your second chart about the fund balance, please. No, the one where it had the years of what it was for different years.
Percentages.
Is it this
Percentages.
There it is.
Yes, sir.
No, that's not what I want. Go back to about, you go too fast for me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's not it. Go back to the front and come down then. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Right, hold it, right, that's what I want. I'd like, I've looked in my form and I do not have, but I'd like a copy of that, Dwayne. That, right there. I think everybody understands, and I did in the beginning, but stabilizing by state statute, you know that, you want to tell us what that is, Dwayne?
Yeah, I'd like a full explanation of that, Mr.
I've been corrected, I'm told it's on page 40. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would definitely defer to Ms. Spivey on that one.
All right.
So that she can probably give you a more textbook response on that.
That stabilization by state statute is basically taking your fund balance and subtracting out payables and prepaid items. That's almost all that it is. But what it also does is it prevents you from spending money that you have already committed or don't have to spend. That's about all it is. And it will change year to year. It just depends on where you stand at year end.
Well, what came to my mind, Mr. Chairman, was you can't have it but one time. And I was just that's an illustration of what I was talking about. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Mr. Paulson?
Yes, sir.
If you pay your taxes early, within a certain period of time, you get a 2% discount, correct?
Correct.
That's a lot of money if you look at it across the entire county. Is that something, if it was done away with, would people still not pay their taxes? They may not pay them as early, but they would still pay their taxes, would they not?
The value of that is like $800,000. The board looked at that probably 3 years ago. Matter of fact, there was a recommendation from staff to reduce it from 2% to 1%, but the far majority of the board did not want, I guess the board felt like it was a tax increase to reduce the discount rate. But, I mean, you could raise easily $400,000 if you subtracted it. If you went from 2% to 1%, if you go from 2% to 0 to no discount, we may have a little bit of a cash flow problem. Right now, half the folks pay their taxes in September to get that 2% discount. The other half wait until January. If everybody, the far majority waited till January, we'd probably have cash flow in those issues in those first 6 months of the year.
Yeah, and I will say that in looking at last fiscal year as an example, basically 12 months of our operation are supported by 3 surplus cash flow months. So typically that's September, January, February. The surplus that we get, which that September is going to be impacted by that discount payment, helps stabilize us from a cash flow standpoint throughout the year.
It allows us to keep the funds we have in fund balance invested, not have to drill those down and lose the investment earnings on those. What little we're earning today, but we are earning something.
What are the investment earnings?
Minimal.
You're not going to get $400 on investment earnings.
In today's environment.
That was a rhetorical statement. You don't have to respond.
We used to earn $1.8 million on investment earnings 6 years ago. Now it's $300,000.
Definitely doesn't mean as much today as it did.
That is something, though, that we addressed during our budgeting process, and it may be something we want to address again. But we did address that and concluded that it was best to keep the 2% discount. But again, we can surely talk about it again during our budget time. Any other questions to Ms. Spivey or Mr. Holder? If not, I'll entertain the motion to accept the report.
I so move.
Okay, let's vote. Okay, the next item on our report is a report on our radio system from Mr. Lee.
If I can get this set up here right quick. Okay, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, passing around a PowerPoint presentation that we'll be presenting tonight. So I'll let you get that before we get started, if you don't mind. Mr. Colson, welcome back.
Thank you, Noel.
Okay. Yeah, it was, okay, well enough. Was there enough? Mr. Chairman, this project has been going on for a long period of time. You know, we started back in many years ago, and when I first started putting this project together, I went back and listed a chronological order of times. And when Scott looked at it, Scott says, no, this is way too much, you know. But again, I think we have to go back and look. I think the biggest part of this project actually started in December of 2008 when we really understood what the narrowband requirements by FCC that we must go to 12.5 kilohertz. So that was started at that point of time. We've done a lot of things with a lot of committees and moving forward. And so I'll start off talking about the components of the radio project. I think very first, though, some of the components is we hired a consultant, federal engineer, and Bob Hamlin here, project consultant, is with us tonight. And again, if we have any real hard questions, I'll defer to him. Motorola project manager, Chris Hoker. Chris has been responsible for actually not the design, but the implementation and the building out and keeping everybody on a timeline. And also Andrew Kurt, who is the regional sales that actually helped develop the price for this. So that was that part of it. The radio project itself existed of 3 different components. We looked at the radio system, the voice recorder, and the paging system, and all of those being tied together to make it. We looked at the locations of the components being at Wintergreen and also the county office building here at 911. When we look at the infrastructure of the radio system, we utilize the existing towers that we have today with a single site system being at Wintergreen. And that is where all the information feeds back to that one site and is transmitted back out. We looked at advanced technology of a microwave or a point-to-point PTP to where the master core takes the information, puts it to that microwave and sends it to Wintergreen, and it talks back and forth. The equipment. When we go in and look, this is truly a state-of-the-art technology that we look at. When we look at base stations or trunk repeaters, we look at servers, routers, gateways, switches, all of these different components coming together. How many times do you think when you pick up your phone, whether it's cell phone or a landline, and you dial it, what's taking place for you to communicate with somebody else? This is what's taking place with this system too. The 911 consoles. We upgraded the 6 positions there. And then the radios, portables, mobiles, that was all part of the actual infrastructure. Back in the spring, somewhere around about April of 2012, the electrical and upgrades to the towers started. This is where Chris Oker started to work, getting all the crews in to start. We got the equipment in, and it was installed as far as the radio equipment to the point that we were able to actually do a radio coverage test of the county in August of 2012. And that test actually met the required coverage guarantee of 95% on the street. From that point, we continued to work with the system, and we actually transitioned from VHF to the 700 megahertz system October of 2012. And the 3 agencies that we transitioned was fire, EMS, and animal control. This system meets the required FCC mandate in narrowband at 12.5 kilohertz. It also meets the future FCC mandate if we need to go to the 6.25. Now, there has been dates that's been set, how true and how fast will they hold to those dates, but we won't have to worry about that with the radio system. It does provide interoperability with Viper. We have identified certain different talk groups that are on the Viper that we have the resources in 911 that we're able to actually tie the 2 systems together by a method called patching. Once Viper is P25 capable or compliant, this is a system that we're working on right now with the state to get them up to Project 25, which we are compliant with our system, that we will have full interoperability. And currently we're in the process of actually programming those P25 Viper. Now, I'm assuming that everybody understands what Viper is, the 800 state system, so we'll go. We also added 4 700 megahertz conventional channels. Sir? Yes, sir. That was basically for law enforcement, but it was actually set up for the total interoperability. But coming back, it basically served the Greenville Fire and Rescue and the law enforcement here in the county. We put 4 700 megahertz. This is part of the National Interoperable Plan, but also it provides us additional interoperability because anybody can load those talk groups that you can have direct communications, and also it does provide us for a backup.
Mr. Chairman, I want to ask one question. Is it paid for?
No, sir.
You took out a 10-year loan, and year 1 is basically paid for. We have 9 more years of debt payments.
Continue. Thank you. This system is a redundant system that has a lot of backups with no one single point of failure. And I say that, but if we lose the Wintergreen Tower, we lost a big component of it, but we do have backup here with the 700 conventional and APX consolettes. But again, there's no single point of failure. This system also allows an instrument to operate on separate talk groups. Before, when we were looking at VHF, we were very limited in actual number of frequencies that we could talk on. Today, we have numerous talk groups. Allows multiple operations to take place at the same time. One night, last week, I was on my way home, 911 called me of an incident going on. And just as soon as they called me, I put my radio on to scan, and I listened to a situation where they thought they had somebody trapped in the house. So I was listening to that communication. Also at the same time, there was a large wreck going on where a major thoroughfare, the road had been blocked. And then there was a third call of a fire alarm. And as I sat there and listened to it, I thought to myself, before, all 3 of those agencies would have had to compete with each other in time space on that radio system to where they all had the opportunity to talk by themselves, not being interfered with others. I continued to listen to that to where I got actually home, and the situation where it was at, and trying not to name the department, was well away from me, but I actually heard an individual inside of the house with an air pack on, breathing, talking to the outside, saying primary search has been completed. So it made me really think of how great and how good this system is as far as giving us that ability. We also added control stations at the Pitt County Sheriff's Communications Center and the Greenville PD Communications. That it gives us the tie-in back to the Sheriff's Office and to Greenville PD. Partnering agencies. We put this system in and we wanted to work with partner agencies, so we brought Greenville Public Works, came in on with that, and Winterville Fire and Public Works. Numerous talk groups I've already mentioned for fire, EMS, but also we were able to come back in and develop talk groups for county agencies such as building and grounds, planning, EOC operations, that if we ever have a large-scale event, we've already got the talk groups built in. So it's basically disaster channels there. And there's many direct or simplex where it's line of sight that does take place. And they're both in the 700 megahertz and Viper, because all of the direct, there again, anybody can load those as far as public safety. Do have a few pictures for you. I don't know how good you'll be able to see these, but again, trying to show you real quick, and I've got a glare here, so I'll try. This is a full site, tower site at Wintergreen. We'll go back up and we'll look about midway up. We'll actually see the microwave or point to point. And then when we go to the very top, it's probably hard for you to see from there, but maybe you can on your handout, the actual antenna system. And this is basically a 480-foot tower. What happens when the power goes out? We have a backup generator that's into the system. The electrical, and you'll notice there's two sort of identical boxes. That's part of that redundancy that's built into. This is where we go in and we start to look at the routers, the switchers, the gateways, base radios. This is actually where now the actual radios are at, taking the system, the signals in and sending it back out. And that's why it's called a trunk system, and it's repeated. We also have a battery backup, again, that if for some reason generator fails, we lose commercial power, generator fails, we've got continuous backup power. Now we move back to the 911 center, and the switches and routers, gateways, base radios, and batteries in the backup. That's here. You'll notice down at the bottom, at the very bottom, that is its backup for that operations right there. And again, these are additional consolettes, switches, and gateways that you'll see in routers in there. I think all of us see the tower here very often. This is the tower located here at the county office building. And if you'll notice, about all the way to the top is the antenna systems. As you come down, there are two cell carriers there with their antennas. And then you will see the microwave, and that microwave is pointed directly to the microwave at Wintergreen, and they talk to each other. As you come down, just about down at the building level, you'll see two additional antennas, and they are for our APX radios and consolettes for both the 7 and 800 system. This is the heart of the system. This is known as the 911 Master Core Site. This is where all the information comes in, bills out, and goes out through all the different switches, gateways, and routers. In this one here too, the voice recorders and part of it. We'll invite you at any time if you'd like a tour. I'd be more than happy to show you around. Again, here's another backup system for batteries in case we lose commercial power and the generator doesn't work here at our location. Our console positions being upgraded. You'll see that we're in a full position, and the upgrades were part of it, but I will show you too, this is new furniture that, is more user-friendly for the 911 dispatchers. Just a quick picture of an APX portable and a pager. This one is not part of the system, but it becomes an integral part, is the actual telephone system. And we put that in, I want to say, a couple of years ago, but again, it is part, and we work with that. and now the network, Mike's group, of actually the network system where it ties our system back into the network. So you can see there's a lot that goes on with it. MOSCAD. Now, I'm not really that I understand what that acronym stands for, because that's one of the things, I think in our world we have been acronym, and that was one of the things that Janice said, get away from those acronyms, and I don't think I've mentioned one tonight so far. But the MOSCAD is a fault management of the system. It helps us identify the problems. We didn't have this before. You had to go out and troubleshoot it. Now this system actually sits there and is continuously monitoring the system to help identify any issues, and it helps in the repairs so that when the repair comes in, also we're able to actually, the Motorola can actually come into the system by the internet and work with it. It's very well protected, but it does help us with the management. It also provides us the history of the system, issues that we may have. When somebody cuts a radio on or off, the system recognizes that and makes a record. When somebody keys up to talk, it tells who talked, what talk group they talked on, and the length of time. Voice recorder. Nice recorder supported by Motorola. Ability to record 40 simultaneous radio transmissions and expandable to 120. And we're nowhere close to that 40 calls or radio transmissions this time. We're recording fire, EMS, tactical talk groups, agency talk groups. The ability to record 32 simultaneous phone calls, expandable to 200. And this one right here is really meeting our need. We have to record all 911 incoming lines. The paging system, infrastructure. When we go back and look at what was actually recommended by federal and where we went with, we utilized the existing VHF equipment. We were able to narrowband it and simulcast. Reason it was simulcast is that they felt that the narrowband would lose a little bit by simulcasting, hopefully would keep basically the same coverage area as what we did have. It does meet the FCC narrowband requirement for 12.5, but does not 6 1/4. We have separate paging for EMS, separate paging for fire. That coverage test was conducted on October 24th and 5th, and it met the required coverage guarantee of 94% on the street. We experienced an issue with paging on November the 30th, December the 1st. It was there, it was intermittent. It would, sometimes we'd have a problem, sometimes it wouldn't. You couldn't detect it. And then finally, later on, I think on December the 1st, I actually got a call, and we were able, it had got to a point where you could find out what was that car that you took to the mechanic to have it worked on, and it didn't exhibit itself there. But we found it was a voter gateway unit, a VGU, that had messed up, and that was part of that simulcast. Radio 1 came in and reset that VGU and stayed with it, got the system back up. It was working good, done a lot of testing. Motorola found also a faulty cable the following week because Motorola came back in and went back through everything with that to determine what was wrong. They did upgrade this voter gateway with a different firmware. Coverage issues. When you go back and you look at the 94% on the street, there are going to be certain areas that you're not going to have 100%. No system does. So every time we have a coverage issue, we try to go back in and research that. We ask each agency that's reporting that to give us date, time, and location. Motorola also has ordered some amplified chargers, so some of those areas that may have weak or not the best desirable, that we're putting those amplified chargers out to try to help with it. Items to be completed. Detention center. They have a digital because this was one I was going to use, the DVRS, digital vehicle repeater system, to put within. Because certain buildings, just radio signals will not penetrate because of the nature of them. Hospital being one, the detention center being another. We did test that, and it was installed Friday. We did test that. That went great. Right now they've got a few portables that they're having in use and trying to determine if the actual template that has been developed works for them. The Greenville Public Works transition to 700 megahertz. That is pretty much completed. They're still installing a few mobiles, but that's pretty much there. Winnable Fire is up, Winnable Public Works, they're working, and hopefully that will be completed this week there. What's our next item to be is review of the entire project with Motorola and Federal Engineering. So you're asking, why is Chris here tonight? Why is Bob here? Because tomorrow we're going to go over the entire project to see and be sure that everything has been met and met accordingly. So then we'll transition from construction to service. Service is a 3-year warranty that was wrote into our contract, and we'll start that. And it's looked at that will be probably January 1 of 2013. And then after that is the final acceptance of the radio project. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, I'll
Thank
try
you
to
very
answer any
much for
questions.
that presentation. We appreciate that. Are there any questions to Mr. Lee, Commissioner Webb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Noel. Detailed presentation. One question that you mentioned about Viper and this overlapping on some channels, is that already available?
The P25? No, sir. The state is working on it right now. Their target date is to have it completed in 2013. They started with that P25 project up in the Charlotte area because of the Democratic National Convention, and it's there. One of the things that we've worked with on the Viper, everything works on different platforms, and it's known as the 4.1. They're totally out of ID, so anybody now wanting to go on the Viper system cannot because there are no IDs available. Once we go to the P25, then they'll open back up, and our radios will actually have the capability of Viper at the same time. And
So they'll be able to, the fire and the law enforcement will be able to communicate.
they will actually be able to go direct. Right now, 911 Center can take the resources that they have in some of the Viper consulates we have in our center and can patch those directly now. The 700 conventional, if an agency would decide to program those, then they could direct it to a direct conversation on the 700 conventional.
So it'll work more like, let's say we had a, God forbid, a train rolled over and we had to evacuate a 5-mile circumference, which is a lot. And they had to communicate the 911 center service as a patch through.
Yes, sir.
So that they could coordinate. And the last thing, with the 700, are we having any of the issues in the southern part of the county, like we've had reported with Viper about dead spots or not being able to get out once they're inside a building? I think I mentioned to you before the problem the Aden Police Department had, where they had a foot chase going on in front of the police department, and the police officers inside could not hear the radio transmission. And that we've had similar issues in Grifton and out that way with just not being able to transmit at all or not being able to receive the transmission, especially inside buildings. Pitt Community College Police have also mentioned issues with that.
Okay. Let's go back. I said I wasn't going to mention the name of the fire department. It was Aden that I actually heard it from my home, which is just off 264 Pitt County, Buff County line. I actually heard the firefighter in the house talking. That's good. To say that there's not a problem somewhere, there's going to be a dead spot somewhere
Sure,
in the
but
system.
this was just kind of chronic.
Okay.
There with that. I'm talking about
Now,
700.
One
I
of the
know it will
things
happen
that
at
we
some
do tell everyone, that once you get on the scene, for going into buildings and everything, you should go to direct channels, which is that direct simplex channel I was talking to for the line of sight. That gives you that on-site building penetration. But so far, we have not experienced any problems.
Right. And I don't expect 100%, but it seems like there's contingencies in place with this. That,
Yes, sir.
That once they're on scene, they can work with that. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner James.
I guess, Chris, you're going to have to be a part of this one. Normally 3 weeks ago, approximately, the entire area, Falkland, Belleville, and that area lost everything. Could not use the pages, the sirens would not go off, or anything else. Don't you have some plan to know that when this happens, it would go not from that department, such as there was a lack of communication, really. You know that, and I know it. And that's the reason it stayed out so long. And of course, something bad could have happened and almost did. But don't you have some system that this could kick in and let you know that there is a problem somewhere in the system?
Mr. James, I can go ahead and address that one.
Okay.
That most CAD that I mentioned a while ago was not complete at that time. It is now complete. That would help identify that.
So now they got not to see that now sirens wouldn't work, nothing. And of course, when they reported it in, it didn't get back to you or didn't get back to Nora Lee. And that was where we had our big problem.
But during that same period of time, it was intermittent. It was
Right.
working perfect sometimes, and during that same period.
Right.
But that night, it finally stopped altogether. So
But see, that went on for 24.
it was about a 24,
Hour
maybe 30
period,
hour that it was going back and forth.
Yes.
Some of the things that we do have in place for that, we have initiated text messaging for the firefighters. It can't be used as primary notification, but is an auxiliary method for notification. And if the fire department members will sign up on that, whenever 911 dispatches them, it will automatically send them a text message with what's going on, the address, and where it's at. So that is there. Also, I will say too, that we have identified in working with Motorola that we might be able to actually provide a backup system so that when we do identify that we got a problem with the paging, we can actually drop back to a backup system. And I think we may, just a little bit of programming, may be able to do that.
Norley, I didn't hear you say anything about the hospital with that communication. Is the hospital in on this deal, on this communication?
We have held several meetings with many partnering agencies throughout the county, 4 I want to say, Scott, and we've invited them to join and be a part of our system. The only 2 that so far has been Greenville Public Works and Winterville Public Works.
All right,
and
so
Winterville
Greenville
Fire.
Police Department is in on the deal.
No, sir, they're on Viper.
All right, let me say this to you. You know, I was probably the only county commissioner here in the flood. I was flooded out. So I know the problems that we have, and that's lack of communication. And when you got one group over here doing something and one group over here doing something, you got problems. I don't care how much money you spend. And we had those problems. And the only way good people I could communicate was with a cell telephone. Let me tell you that right now. So you don't ever count them out. But I'm glad that you got that, Chris, that y'all got that worked out, because I really got fussed out on that deal. Most of you are not out there with the firemen as
I took a right good licking on that one too,
what's
Mr. James.
Oh yeah, I know. But I got you. But anyway, it's and I appreciate you doing what you're doing. Don't get me wrong now. We need it, but we need all of us to be in together, so we know what each other's is doing. See, the reason they sent me to Tarbell when I got flooded out is because lack of communication. I went on a Navy helicopter. He didn't talk to nobody but the Navy people. Amazing. But anyway, that's not y'all's problem, that was mine. But I don't want us to have to go through it again, is what I'm saying. And most of you didn't realize that, see, what was taking place.
Okay.
What about the airport?
Yeah, you got your airport too there.
The airport, we have a system worked out with them. We're also talking with them, trying to get them to be onto our system, but we do have methods that we do communicate with the airport.
Okay. Did you have a question?
No, can you maybe tell the board the input you've received from the chiefs regarding radio paging, the new system?
I think the biggest parts that we're seeing right now, and this was actually in the projection of the weakest areas, or the areas does great on the street, but in building, and sometimes you can still be in one of those places, is basically in that Farmville Fountain area as it was before. That is where we've taken those amplified chargers and put them in there. I talked with Lee Keel, who's the chief in Farmville, and the things that we have done when Tom Lincoln, who was the service tech ST with Motorola, has been there working on that. He's telling me it's working great. Are they still having some problems in areas? Yes, sir. But
I think it's probably important to note too on the paging system. I think the Bob Hamlin and Federal Engineering had recommended a digital system. We went with voice paging because the fire chiefs wanted it, and
Voice
actually
and
digital was the more newer technology. And now that we've implemented voice paging, there are a few folks that are saying, why don't we have digital? I mean, isn't...
a lot of people like the text message and they receive and say, but again, you know, that was the ask was they wanted the voice and tones. and we did go back. Other than the cost of purchasing the actual pagers, the actual cost for converting on the paging was very small. But now the cost of those pagers were large.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, just briefly, Mr. Elliott, as one county commissioner, I'm going to need to depend on you to communicate the details of this system back to this board more than once so that we can fully understand what's going on. The technical part of it is one aspect, but this board understanding is another aspect entirely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having served on this committee with Commissioner Chairman Garris, I want to thank the federal engineer and Bob Hamlin, I think, and then also Motorola and you, Noah, for the excellent job that you were doing in terms of keeping us informed. One of the concerns, and I think our manager was talking a little bit about the paging system, when the FCC narrowband requirement for 12.5, it meets that, but not the 6.25. Explain that.
Okay, right now, the FCC came out with a mandate, and it was issued, I think, probably somewhere around 2004, but there was no real strong push on it until about 2007, 2008. When Greenville was working with a COPSTEC grant and they were putting in the Viper system for the law enforcement in Greenville Fire and Rescue, we actually had a chance to talk with the project engineer, Robert Law, and he was working with us of trying to enhance our system, but he said, why do you want to enhance your system when that narrowband requirement has come in 2013 and a lot of your equipment is not narrowbandable? They also said, and what they're doing, they have a spectrum of 25 that only one talk group or one frequency can be given. But FCC, because of the demands, they're bringing that down to 12.5, so it gives, within that 25, two frequencies that can talk. And now, right now, I think the date is 2018, 18 or 19, that they're going to narrow that to 6.25, so there will actually be, four abilities to talk within what used to be 25, so there'll be a lot of competition. That was not something that we did, it was a federal mandate. Now the paging, the system that we had, it was only narrowbandable to 12.5.
No,
So,
also the system the fire chiefs wanted with a voice paging, there was no 6.25 system that was available.
The
only
only
go from 25 to 12.5, couldn't step down to the 6.25.
The only one was the 900 digital paging was the only one that would have took us to the 6.25.
Okay, any further questions of Mr. Lee? Very good, thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
I'd just like to ask them, who mandates this stuff on us? It goes back again, just like this stinking federal government. They come out here and they make you do all these things and don't pay anything of it. And like this outfit causing us to spend millions, and a lot of the departments didn't even want it.
This is the Federal Communications Commission in Washington, D.C.
Need to go up there and kick them all out.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move for acceptance of items for consent.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, let's vote on that, please. Before we move to our items for decision, I just want to make sure that I believe that Sergeant Coburn is in the audience, and I was wondering, did he have a report on the safety that we were discussing earlier? I didn't want to miss that if he is planning on giving a report.
I'm available to answer any questions that the board may have concerning the consent.
Let's do it after the meeting.
Okay, does anyone have any questions you would like to address? Would you please come forward to the microphone, please? We discussed this earlier, but I don't believe you were here. So I know some of our board members had some questions
Yes,
about
sir.
security in light of the incident in Connecticut. So, Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sergeant. What are we doing? I know that after every event like that, there's a reevaluation of current policies. Now, I'm assuming that's going on right now. I received a lot of concern from parents over the weekend about unlocked doors at schools in Pitt County, especially in our more rural schools. Are we, if you can speak on it, are we adapting to the current situations?
We are in talks with the staff from the school system at this point in doing some reevaluation. Some campuses are forced to have more than one entry point unlocked because of issues such as mobile units and overcrowding in the schools. And so we are at this point looking at a way that we can address those needs.
And our SROs, do they have access to the equipment and, a blunt term, the weapons they need to combat someone that has a long gun?
We do have the same weapons issued as patrol officers. The challenge is that some of those weapons are in the trunks of vehicles that would be a challenge in a critical incident to get to because of the secure need for those weapons, such as shotguns and assault rifles.
Okay. And I think that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to make a comment. I appreciate what the SROs do. I think it's a program that needs to be expanded, as we've seen in Connecticut. One SRO could have changed that whole dynamic. Any good guy that was armed could have changed that dynamic, but especially a trained officer that has been through rapid deployment training that you guys go through, and I've been through every year. It could have been a totally different narrative. And I know budgets are tight, and I know that that's not necessarily our purview as it pertains to the schools, but I think that that's something that definitely needs to be looked at. I think that entry systems and hardening, I mean, sadly to say that our schools, including elementary schools, almost have to be forts now. But if we have one injured child, then we failed, and especially in light of the information we have now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. James?
Does a resource officer in each school have live ammunition?
Yes, they do. We are equipped the same. They are deputy sheriffs who are assigned to the schools.
It's a known fact. Every shooting, the police will never get there in time. These people that did the shooting, you know what happens to them? They shoot themselves, every one of them. All right. I was in World War II, so I know what everybody can't shoot somebody. You know that, don't you? They don't have the guts to take it and do it. And we had a lot of them in the Army that couldn't do it. You got a lot of them here that can't do it, too. It's not easy. The guy in Oregon that had that pistol, he had an opportunity to shoot that guy, but he didn't shoot him. But anyway, is there anybody in that school, and this to me is the key to it, has training and can use a gun? Because that's what it's going to come to, people. Because the police are not there. There's no way that you can protect them when a man is crazy or a woman is crazy. You can't stop them.
Are you referring to civilians?
Yeah. I'm talking about like the principal, vice principal, somebody there. They need protection, and if there's no guns there in that school at all, that guy's going to kill all he wants to kill before you can get there. Let's face it.
Our general statutes currently prohibit weapons being on campus unless you are a certified
Exactly
law
right. I
enforcement
know
officer.
that. But that doesn't protect these little ones. You know, the gentleman that was here tonight, and he was talking there, the safest places for our kids is supposed to be in a public school. But more of them are getting killed there than anywhere I know of. So it's not so safe, is it? And we need to look at some source where these young people can be protected. I don't have the answer to it, but I know we're not doing anything, and I know this. If we're going to depend on you, if I'm going to depend on you, you are out here a mile to get there to stop this guy, you can forget it, because he's going to do all the damage before you ever get there, and then he's going to blow his own brains out. So that's it. But I think somebody's got to get some idea as to what we can do, not in 5 minutes, but in 5 seconds. Is what you got to do. And you might not agree with me, but I've been down that road and I know what it is. You got a lot of policemen that are gun happy and so forth. I was amazed as I looked at those policemen that it had been over 2 or 3 hours and they had that high power rifle still going around there. I said, you dumb joker. But that's beside the point. I've said
Okay, I think that I believe that you guys are doing everything you can do to put in a plan the best we can to make sure that this doesn't happen here. Are we going to prevent everything? No, we are not. But I appreciate everything that you guys are doing to help protect our children and help protect our community. And we rely upon you guys to develop the best plan that you can develop, and I feel confident that you're doing that. Now, okay, Commissioner McLaughlin.
I want to just ask this question, and I appreciate what you're doing. You're certainly doing a tremendous job. Is there a state requirement, to your knowledge, that all doors, and I thought I heard this, all doors in school, the entrance doors has to be open?
What we have is the Attorney General's plan for lockdowns and critical incidences that we all follow. It's a uniform. I don't want to speak on the details of that, obviously, because some of that information is sensitive and needs to be maintained as such. Would be glad to maybe, with the superintendent and the Board of Education's approval, maybe to speak with you all, in a more private on some of those sensitive matters. In regards to your question about points of entry, there is not a specific mandate on that. It is recommended to minimize those points of entry, and the ideal situation is for one point of entry at the very front of the building for obvious reasons. That is not always a luxury that we can have at this point because of issues such as overcrowding and annex buildings such as mobile units, and issues that I do think that the Board of Education is seeking ways to address through bond referendums and buildings. But certainly we have some work to do on that.
Okay. In reference to what Commissioner James was saying, as far as the principal being armed with a firearm, I think that, as I understand it, there's been some federal consideration of that now because of the incident that happened in Connecticut. That first person that was targeted was in the principal's office, and he, so I think there's a lot to be considered in terms of the total safety. But again, I want to thank you for what Pitt County is doing. I understand today was the safest day in America at our school system, which I commend that too. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, I would like for us as a Board of Commissioners not to get into what is the responsibility of the Board of Education. And I really think we ought to depend upon the Board of Education to do their job, and we'll do our job.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward?
I was just going to make the comment that I know that I assume that I know because sometimes things change, but it's my understanding that all outside doors are locked that are, to the people on the outside, but everybody can get out. Even at one time, the trailers or, the mobile classrooms are locked from the outside. And I know when they first came out with those, they didn't even have the safety push on the doors for the mobile classrooms, and they were put on immediately back when I was in the principal's office. But there's usually one door, and it's the door that is open to the public that is at the principal's office or where there are people. Sometimes it's not necessarily the very front door, but it's the main entrance where there are always people on duty and that sort of thing. I know that in some schools they have to be buzzed in even in the front door. But if you go out to any of these county schools, I've been out and spoken to 4 of them this year, and I had to be let in, and I was expected. So I know there are lots of things in place. And I think that, as you said, Mr. Harris, I think they're doing all that they can possibly do. And I think looking at it again now, you can always improve and make. So we do appreciate what you're doing. And I don't want the public to think that there's not anything in place out there, because there's a lot, and there are a lot of rehearsals for such things as a lockdown and that sort of thing that are required to go on along, just like a fire drill and that sort of thing. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming before us this evening and answering our questions. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you. We shall now move on to our items for decision. The first one is our solid waste management plan, and Mr. Demery is going to present that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, excuse me, but when I changed in my suit, I forgot my reading glasses. So I'm going to try to go on memory.
You want to borrow mine?
I'm here before you. We have to do a 10-year solid waste management plan that has to be updated every 3 years. This is the 3-year update. The plan has been prepared. We had a public meeting last Tuesday night. Nobody showed up. We had, it was advertised in the paper. We had a copy at the Shepherd Memorial Library for the public to view, as well as in the county manager's office. I have worked with the municipalities. All but the town of Bethel has approved a resolution to be part of our plan. This plan basically is what it is a plan of our solid waste activities, from what we do at the transfer station to what the city of Greenville does, recycling efforts, disposal efforts, and those types of things. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. I do have a copy if you want to read it.
And I believe a copy of that's in the manager's office.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so are there any questions of Mr. Demery? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I second it.
Okay, any further discussion? Let's vote. I believe, Mr. Demery, you are up next also for the renewal contract for Republic Services for transporting our solid waste over to the private landfill in Bertie County.
Yes, sir. This contract is, it needs to be updated. It's approximately 10 years ago, the county went out to bid, and Republic won the bid, and we started to, they started to haul the waste and accept the waste at their landfill in Bertie County. 10 years ago, before the switch, the tipping fee was roughly around $32, $33 a ton. Recently, currently our tipping fee is $28.55. This also includes a $2 tax that we have to pay the state. Also includes the transportation of the waste. In the last 10 years, there have been only 2 increases in this contract, and trying to look at my notes. And right now, it's a 7% increase. And when we decided to go with this new contract, one of the things that I asked is that I would like to see a number that we have a fuel adjustment charge every month. And that fuel adjustment charge is based on $1.43 a gallon of fuel for diesel fuel. We know that's not going to happen. Fuel's not going to go down to $1.43. I believe that was in the contract 10 years ago. So I wanted to see a more reasonable amount for $4.09. So our new fuel adjustment will be based on $4.09. Therefore, that's why the increase, a 7% increase from the $28.55 to the $33.66.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Tipping fee the same?
Our tipping fee? Yes, sir. Oh, one other thing I need before you ask another question. The contract will be in effect January 1st if it's approved. The rate increase will not go into effect until July 1st. so I'll be prepared for it at budget time.
Okay.
But our tip and fee is not planning to be increased.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we renew the contract with Republic Services.
I want some questions.
Okay, I have a
first.
motion to have a second, now,
Okay,
Mr.
now,
James.
All right. We were paying $32 a ton, is that right?
That, over 10 years ago.
Over 10 years?
Yes, sir.
What is what is this going to come up to now?
Presently, right now, we pay $28.55.
All right.
The new contract will be for $33.16.
What did you say?
66, excuse me.
All right, diesel price, did you say 408?
They're in the old our existing contract, there is a fuel surcharge, a fuel adjustment for the price of fuel. And it's based on, the calculation is based on $1.43 a gallon of fuel. Okay, there's a calculation. I thought it's best, since fuel's never probably going to go down to $1.43, let's base it on the price of fuel, current price of fuel. And that's what we're trying to do.
There's also a calculation in there that if it goes below 409,
Yeah,
we get credit.
if it goes,
Well, it's not 409 now. You can buy
If
it
it goes-
anywhere. It's about
If
$3.95.
it goes above, then they get the surcharge above that mark.
That's what I'm questioning about. Is you can buy it. I can $3.95. Do they pay road tax on it?
On the fuel?
Yeah.
I
For
would assume
diesel?
so.
Huh?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
They do.
I would, yes, they.
Well, I
would
don't know.
assume.
I mean, the state does, and that's a different world when you go to the state.
They're a private hauler, so they'd have to pay it.
Yeah, well, then they would have to pay. Have we contacted these others like we did 10 years ago?
I did contact, there's only one other company that would be interested and has a landfill fairly close, and I did contact them. I did sit down and speak with them. They were interested, but they just couldn't compete with the price.
So it was more. How about
Yeah.
Edgecombe County? How are they connected? I go right by that landfill quite often.
I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe Edgecombe County sends their waste to Republic's
They've
facility.
got a
as
big
well.
one, out there from Tarboro back on the Sarah Lee Road there. I guess it's not a bad price, don't get me
No,
wrong,
sir.
but I want
It's
to make sure.
still an excellent price.
Yes, I want to make sure that we're getting the best, because that's going to run that fee up that we have. What is it that we pay, $78 a year?
$71.
$71. Of course, that's one of the best in the state, don't get me wrong, I know that.
Yes, sir.
Got probably some other places, but, okay. I got
Okay,
no-
Mr. Colson?
What is the $2 going to the state? What kind of service does the state provide for collecting that, or is it just another revenue stream for the state?
A lot of that money comes back. We get money quarterly from the state, from that money raised. We also, it's put into a pot, and we get grants, and in the last 4 or 5 years I've been here, we've received grants. We've got a $25,000 grant that I'm getting ready to start work on. Grant money given back to the local governments, but we also, based on per capita, we do receive, I can't think, about $14,000, $15,000 a quarter. It don't hold me to that.
Okay, so out of the entire amount, what kind of a percentage do you think we get in return? If you give them 100%, how much of that comes back to us?
I'd say roughly with the grants, I don't know, 30, 40%.
So in other words, 60%, 70% might be just a new revenue stream for the state. Is that correct?
Or it's distributed to other counties.
That's what we were losing.
Yeah.
Well, if it's going to other counties disproportionately, why would that be?
Something I'd have to get back with you on.
Politics.
Could not answer that. I can get you.
Well, is it something we need to talk to and beg the legislature to possibly change?
Just not have the two. How much money
Yes,
we talking
sir.
about?
How
much
much-
money you talking about? How much does Pitt County pay them if we're paying them $2 per ton? How many tons have we?
Not with 98. We sent 98,000 tons last year to Bertie County, plus I can't think 24,000 C and D. So
It's 180,000
yeah,
total.
200 and I want to say 250 50,000 maybe, I think,
Okay.
is, I remember seeing it on my budget. I can look it up, because we separate that in my budget.
Well,
Line item.
from what Commissioner Coates said, why don't we put that as one of our things? Look, you shouldn't be charging us this, and just get them to knock it out.
Take them out of the equation,
Okay,
keep
we-
the money. So.
I mean, I'm all for it, but they charge every.
Oh, I know, that's one of those things again, that they're coming in here getting our money.
So what you can do is just give us a report back about the $2, how it's split and how much we get back. And then if we want to discuss it with our legislative team, we can surely do that. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this contract, so let's vote. Okay, thank you. The next item is our lease program for buyout properties, and Mr. Rhodes is going to present that.
Oh, there's Jimmy.
You may recall after Hurricane Floyd, the county acquired approximately 100 properties throughout the county that were flooded, that were also located within the 100-year floodplain. Totaled about 300 acres. We established a lease program once we started acquiring that property in about 2001. A lot of these leases have now run their full term, 10-year term. And of course, we set this lease program up primarily to help limit the amount of maintenance funds the county would have to invest in these properties. And I'd have to say that this program has worked wonders around the county. We did an inventory of the property over the summer. All the properties that we have leased, which is close to 85, have been maintained per the requirements of the leases. You can see everything from some just being naturally occurring properties to some garden areas and just an extension of folks' lawns that may live next door. So this has worked well for us. We now are moving into our second terms, and we also would like the board to look fully at the policy that's being edited just a tad. But first up, we have done the inventory. We've also identified those properties that have their leases that have expired to date, and we've already advertised these properties. There are 21 included in your package tonight that have been advertised and are ready to be leased again. We've refined the lease agreement. Legal staff has assisted with that. And again, top priorities given to those people that have already leased the properties and are in good standing. And again, the 10-year lease program, $10 for the lease up front, and we will continue to monitor that. So tonight's actions that are requested, there is a resolution included in your package that mentions those 21 properties for lease, and authorize now the county manager to approve the lease agreements, and most importantly also ensure that you approve the county's buyout property lease policy that's included in your package.
Okay, Mr. Johnson.
I'd like to know what the county manager's recommendation is on this.
My recommendation that's stated on the agenda abstract was to concur with the recommendation of the renewal for the lease program of buyout properties.
Any further questions?
One, property that is in the wooded area, can the county of Pitt harvest that timber and sell it?
There are some provisions, yes.
All right, we need the 10 years, and I'm sure, I know where there's a piece that we had the big questions about not too long ago.
Mr. James, we can harvest that timber, but the income from it, I believe, has to go back to the federal government as part of the lease buyout program, doesn't it? Hasn't this question came up in the past?
That should not go back to the state.
I think we need to
Janice,
investigate it.
I don't, that's a different situation whereby some of the repair and replacement housing, if those are returned, that income goes back to the state for the crisis housing assistance funds. But these properties are county owned now.
Okay, any further questions? If not, I will entertain a
Move
motion.
approval.
We have a motion, second?
Second.
I second it.
Okay, let's vote. Next item on our agenda is a budget amendment for $2,585 to come from contingency. Dr. Morrow is requesting that, and that is to cover the cost of a nurse to administer the flu vaccine. This will last for about 3 weeks.
I move we accept this budget amendment.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Let's vote. The next item on page 129 is the chairman appointments. I believe each of you have been contacted relative to these appointments. If you have any questions, we will entertain them. Otherwise, I will accept the motion.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Let's vote. Also, we have our, Mr. Johnson.
I'll be with you in a minute.
Okay. We have our Legislative Goals Conference.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Johnson to serve as our voting delegate.
Very good. Any further nominations? Let's vote on that then. The next item on our agenda is the appointment of George Bell to replace Kyle Willis on our EMS Oversight Committee. According to our bylaws there with the EMS Oversight Committee, the chairman of the Rescue EMS Association serves on that committee, and Kyle is rotating off as president, so it's appropriate to appoint George.
I move that we.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Let's vote. Thank you. And that is it, except we do have a closed session. Madam Attorney, can you take us into closed session, please?
Yes, it has been suggested that this board go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A5 to establish or to instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price or other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or release, and also under 143-318.11A1 to prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to the law of this state or of the United States, or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes.
Very good. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Move.
Second.
Okay, let's vote. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back from our closed session. We have one item of business that we need to take care of. Mr. Webb, would you make a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion that we approve the minutes for the November 5th, 2012 closed session as to the content only.
I second it.
Any further discussion? Let's vote. Thank you. We will now have our commissioner comments. Commissioner Hammond?
No comment.
No comment.
James?
I have one. I had asked to get a copy of the appointments to the boards of, general policy appointments to the boards and commissions and committees. And one of the things that I think that we might want to consider as a board is, yes, another amendment. There's nothing in there that says anything about the background of people that get on these committees. Let's say that whether somebody was a child molester, would we want them on any of these committees? What is their background as far as breaking the law, arrests, so on and so forth? Do we want them associated with it? I don't see there's nothing in here that vets anybody, and I think that might be something that we ought to consider. So I'd like to ask staff then to review that, see what the practicality of it is, bring it back to the next meeting, and then maybe we can discuss it and decide on whether or not it makes any sense.
Okay.
Other than that, no.
Okay.
No comment. Thank you.
Mr. Owens?
No, okay.
Mr. Johnson?
No comment.
Mr. Longman? Mr. Webb?
Just a few items to report from the NCACC Board of Directors meeting. Matt Chase from NACO visited us at our Board of Directors meeting in Raleigh. We now have 99 county member in NACO, one more county committed, and we're almost back to 100% with NACO. We approved our legislative goals, and to touch on something that was mentioned earlier, increasing care subsidies to reduce waiting lists and supporting funds for Smart Start and pre-K are in there. And that's obviously state and federal level. And to support our mental health functions, as we saw with Connecticut, mental health has to be addressed on the state level as well as the local level to help prevent incidents like that. And as far as that goes, and I know this is getting off a little bit on that, and this will be all I say about it, but that I would encourage our people here and as a nation that as long as we continue to be divorced from God, devalue human life in the womb and outside of it, that our family structure breaks down and we allow video games and celebrities to raise our children, that no piece of legislation is going to stop anything like that. And just in case, because I've gotten letters from them before, I'm not talking about the ACLU's God of ambiguity. I'm talking about Jesus Christ, the author of eternity, that if we do not get back to those principles, fasten your seatbelts. And that is all I have.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Let's vote.